All right, so again, this is Pop the Disinformation Bubble. This is how we can take control and counter those lies. So I hope everybody is in the right place. If there is an echo, can you let me know? Sometimes that can happen on here. Is it okay? All right, I'm going to go forward. Jenny, I got two co-hosts with me. I'm here tonight. Hold on a second. Let's give this a second. Jenny, do you want to unmute and let me know what's going on? All right, we're going to get underway. And if there's a problem, if Jenny wants to let me know. All right, we're going to just get going. Jenny, I don't know what the issue is, but hopefully it's going to get, it's been resolved. All right, so this is, again, let's get all over again. This is Pop the Disinformation Bubble with Building Bridges for America. And, oh, I see. Hold on, I got this. All right, we good now? Yay, okay, figured it out. All right.
Sorry, guys, I got locked out of the
All right, couldn't figure it out what the issue was, but we are good now, and we are going to get underway. So again, sorry for thank you for your patience. We've had such a huge influx of interest in our courses since Kamala became our nominee. So much excitement, so much enthusiasm out there that, yeah, it's been a bit of a technical challenge for all of us to catch up. But let's dive in. This is Pop the Disinformation Bubble, take control and counter those lies. So we like to say that you are in rooms full of like-minded people from all across the country. So go ahead and jump into the chat, either in the Facebook Live or here in our Zoom room, and introduce yourselves, say hello, let us know where you're joining us from. There might be people from your area that are that you can meet in the chat. So again, go ahead, say hi, say what you're so excited about, say what you're working on. Again, you're in the room of like-minded people. I don't want this experience just to be you listen to me talking. You can also be interacting with others from across the country. So, so as Democrats, we believe that the economy should work for everyone, that healthcare is a right, that diversity is our strength, and that democracy is worth defending. So you're in a room of like-minded people who are going that. So hopefully all of that resonated with you. And then we're part of Building Bridges for America. We're an all-volunteer nationwide group. We got started back in March of 2020. We actually spun out of Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign. And we've been teaching these courses, these 8 courses for volunteers since then. So I've been teaching this particular course on disinformation for a long time. And I swear every single time I teach this course, it's becoming more and more and more relevant every single time. All right, some friendly norths to get us started. First of all, if you could please keep yourself muted if you're in the Zoom room. It just helps knock down on that background noise. There's a lot of people both in here and then and also happily we can have people joining us over on Facebook Live now to increase our capacity. If you have questions, go ahead and post them into the chat. You're got some very knowledgeable people in the room. We got Terry and Jenny are my co-pilots tonight, so they might be able to help answer them. They'll also flag them, anything that we might be able to address at the end. And I'm going to try and keep the meeting to an hour. We've started a little late, so I'm going to try and talk a little faster. So my name is Kaz Margana. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from South Bend, Indiana. I'm not going to talk much about myself, but just letting you know, I am a volunteer, what we call a super volunteer. I've been working on campaigns since Pete's campaign as a volunteer. I also have a foot that in grassroots, as Building Bridges is a grassroots group. And disinformation near and dear to my heart. I lost a loved one, went down a disinformation rabbit hole, disowned the family, and I had to work very hard to bring them back. So I learned about what disinformation was. How does it happen? Because, my loved one is a very smart, very, bright person. How did they start believing this crazy stuff? And then, so I wanted to build up the empathy to understand, and then to bring them back. What can I do to bring them back? So that's what we're going to cover here tonight. So again, Pop the Disinformation Bubble is the name of the course, because we want to put that power back into your hands, to feel like you're in control of the information and be able to counter some of those lies that you hear coming at you. So today's goals: first, we're going to be able to identify what disinformation is, and then talk about how it became so prevalent. I'm going to do some media literacy, so learning how to navigate the media. And then we're going to grow those empathy muscles to really understand how the heck people can believe this stuff, and then learn some practical ways about how you can reach through and break through to people to get them to focus on the truth. We're going to go back a little ways, back to President Biden's inauguration. At his inaugural speech, he said, "Let us listen to one another, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics need not be a raging fire destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be cause for total war. And we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated or even manufactured." That's what Biden said at his inauguration, when he's setting his the next 4 years, what his priorities are. He's talking about disinformation. He's talking about how we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. How did we get to this point? How do we get to this point that one of the top priorities for the president is talking about countering disinformation, and what can we do about it? Well, it gives you a little hint there on what you can do about it. So first is to be informed, to understand what disinformation is and being able to identify. And then second, really importantly, being able to turn around and help others, inform others with empathy. So that's what we're going to be doing here tonight. Let's dive into the basics. What is disinformation? So disinformation and misinformation are both false. They're false information. The difference between misinformation and disinformation is that misinformation is the person who's sharing it, they actually believe that it's true. Whereas disinformation, these are the real bad guys. These are the ones that are sharing information that they know is false. So you will kind of hear the words disinformation and misinformation kind of used interchangeably. And that's because the difference between the two is intent, and it's hard to tell people's intent. So you kind of hear those words used interchangeably. There's a third kind of information out there called malinformation. This is true information that is shared to do harm. That is also called doxing. We're actually not going to talk about that tonight, but it is that family of information. But we're going to focus on that really bad stuff. We're going to focus on the false misinformation, and then the false information with intent to do harm, disinformation. And then there's different kinds, different categories of misinformation and disinformation, and knowing how to categorize them can help you spot them when you see them out in that whole fire hose of information that seems to come at us all day long. So first, I want to point out that I got this information. I got these slides from UNESCO. UNESCO has training modules to use for high school students to help them to be able to identify misinformation. So I bring that up because UNESCO, the UN of UNESCO, stands for United Nations. That's because this disinformation is not just something that's happening in America, we're seeing it across the whole globe. Also, these slides, they've been around for a little while. So disinformation is not something brand new. This is something that's been going on for a little while. It just seems like it's growing and becoming even more prevalent every day. Okay, back to the categories, the different categories of disinformation. Starting on the left-hand side of the slide is the stuff that is not so bad. This is more of your misinformation side. On the furthest left is satire and parody. So satire and parody is actually a form of misinformation. It's not true. It's they're sharing information that's not true. The difference is there's no intent to do harm. They're just trying to be funny. The other kinds of not so bad misinformation, there's misleading content. This is what you can call it political spin. We hear that all the time. Another one is clickbait. That's when the headline doesn't quite match or might not match very much at all to the content of the article. That's called clickbait. They're very frustrating kinds of misinformation. But yeah, there's not the same intent to do harm. Then we go over to the right. Now we're starting to get into the bad stuff. There's false context. That's when stuff is shared out of context to deceive. There's imposter content. This is where people pretend as if they are authoritative voices. So pretend they're a news source or something like that. And then the worst stuff is all the way over there to the right. This is when manipulated content, this is when they take content and they actually change it, manipulate it to make it something that it's not, or fabricated content. They just make stuff up whole cloth. So we're going to have an opportunity later on to be able to use these categories to try to identify something is true or not, and see if we can put a category onto it as well. So again, this is just helpful if you can, if you know what the categories are. It's kind of helpful to be able to spot them out there so you can better identify when things are misinformation or disinformation. So how do we get here? How do we get to this point? President Biden is saying this in his inaugural speech, how you on a Thursday night are sitting in a room learning about this stuff. How did we get here to this point? So sticking with UNESCO, sticking with that training, they have these, they outline really high level, these three interlocking pieces to a good democracy. So it starts with the media as an information provider that then keeps citizens, voters informed so they can make good voting decisions and vote in people that are going to have good governance. And then the media is going to then check and report on what is happening in the government so people can make good informed choices, and round we go. So those are those three interlocking pieces. So what happens if one of those pieces is no longer there? So what happens when one of those pillars, so when journalism that really has a dramatic change, what happens? So back in the day, I am old enough to remember when a TV had a knobs on it. You would go up to the TV physically and turn a knob to one of the few channels on the TV. In that era, that was called the pre-digital era. And in that pre-digital era, their journalism used a practice called the gatekeeper model. So that meant that any information first was passed through fact checkers before it was published. So again, a gatekeeper model, making sure that everything that was published was factual. The other thing is because there were only a few knobs, there was knobs on the TV and only a few channels, it meant that we had a shared experience of the news. We were all getting our news from, one of just a few news sources. So shared experience of the news. And what that allowed us to do is, one, you had more trust in the information that was being provided because you knew that it was being fact checked. And you also had this sense of community because you were getting all of the same news the same way at the same time. You might interpret that news in different ways, you might have different feelings about the news, but at least we were all getting the same content. Fast forward to today. Now, there is no longer a gatekeeper model for all the sources of news out there. So we have to act as our own gatekeepers. And a little hint to what is coming up later, we're not really good at that. We're pretty good. We're not really good at determining what is true or not. And also, there's, rather than having just a few sources of information, there are countless sources of information. So we are creating our own media bubble. So even within one household, you can have multiple, each person can have a different media bubble. There's no longer that shared sense of the news. So we're all creating our own media bubbles, our own realities, even our own truth. So what's that feel like? Well, it can make us feel a little lonely, right? Because we don't have that shared sense with others anymore. If we don't really trust the information that's coming at us, that's gonna be scary, right? It can feel scary. And we're human beings, we seek community. So if we're not feeling that sense of community, it can make us go out and want to seek that community. Um, uh, then add to that, add to that already bad situation, add in that there's bad actors out there. There are bad actors out there that are intentionally misleading us, intentionally putting bad information and lies out there to continue to lower that trust and let us slip further and further into our own bubbles. So it's a little scary, but I don't like dwelling on the bad stuff for too much. So I'm just going to point out that about those bad actors. This stuff has been going on for a long time. There's been many different sources of interference, but one that has been going on for a long time that's well documented is that Russia has been interfering, particularly in American and other places. And what they've been doing for decades is they put out what's called 50-50 messaging. So they take something that has a consensus that everybody believes, is that overwhelming people agree on. They take something as a consensus and they put out 50-50 messaging. They put out, they flood the area with, flood the media with both positive and negative. It's positive, it's, if something's a consensus, you don't need to talk about it. And then, but then they also put out the bad stuff, the countering to that. And what it does is it takes something that it has a consensus and it makes it controversial. They first started doing this with vaccines. They took something, the huge consensus amongst the science community, even today, that vaccines are safe and beneficial. And they put out 50% information saying pro-vaccine, 50% negative vaccine. What it caused is that people were no longer sure that there was a consensus and it made it into a controversy. And now we see where we're at today. They've done it with other things as well. Why? Why the heck? Why the heck is Russia? Why do they care about that? Well, the effect of doing that, of breaking up this consensus, one is it discredits authoritative voices. So we no longer have anyone to go to. We no longer have that trust in institutions. We don't have that trust even in each other. And it weakens the American government and it weakens America in general. So, unfortunately, it did work. And from that space of lowered trust in institutions, low trust in each other, that's where you get these demagogue-like political figures like Donald Trump rising up out of that distrust. All right, that's a little bleak. I don't want to bum you out for the whole time. So now we're going to turn it positive. We're going to talk about what we can do about it. I do like to cite my resources and give you additional stuff to read and dive into, because this is all about putting up the truth. So I like to verify my resources. So again, those teaching models from UNESCO. There's a great one-pager about how we got here from Macalester University in Minnesota. And then there's a really good short book called Trust by Pete Buttigieg, very readable book about how we came to this world we're in now of lowered trust and what we can do to bring it back. So what can we do about that? First thing I want to put in your toolbox to take control of information is you to be able to curate your media sources. And that is with this really helpful chart called AdFonts Media. Puts out this great helpful chart where they objectively analyze every single media source. What you see on the screen is just a tiny smattering of all of the sources that they objectively analyze. And they put it on onto this chart that then shows you whether or not that source has a left or right bias, or whether its bias is in the middle, or going top to bottom. At the top, do they mostly report facts? In the middle, do they mostly report or share opinions? And then the bottom's really bad stuff. Do they just make stuff up? Is it just hyper partisan, propaganda? So this chart then helps you out in several ways. First of all, it will allow you to know what are those trusted sources that you can go to. Let's say you are scrolling through online and you see someone sharing a post and it makes you feel, really hits your emotions. So it makes you feel really angry and you want to know if it's true or not. Well, you can go to the top and to the middle to these sources that are unbiased and that report on facts and see what they have to say about it, right? So it's your way of checking. You can do your own fact checking. You can also then find what your own bias is, or maybe the bias of others that are sharing that information. So if you are somebody that thinks that let's pick one, that CNN, the TV, what they show on TV is basically just a Republican rag these days. If it's so conservative now, if you feel that, well, you can look here and you can say, well, objectively, it skews left. It's almost strong left. So if you feel that it's too conservative, well, that lets you know where your bias is. And that's fine. We all can have our biases, but it's just knowing that there is an objective, there are facts and there is political bias, and just knowing where you fit on that. Also for friends and family, like I said, if you hear from friends and family and they think that something is too one way or another and it doesn't quite match up with reality, you can just, like I said, you can add that in, add it into your calculus of whether or not something from that source you would deem as something factual or not. So again, up at that very top is going to be where you can go to fact check. The kind of the standard has always been AP and Reuters. Reuters' little symbol isn't showing up on the latest screen grab, but they are right there at the top in the middle with AP. Also right in the neighborhood nowadays is ABC News, BBC News, PBS. All of these are right in the middle and at the top. So those are all really good resources to go to for fact-based and less biased information. So AdFonts, good one to put into your back pocket. All right, now we're going to do a little test of whether or not a post is disinformation or not. Is it legit or not? So, and then try to determine, is it legit or not? And two, if it's not legit, what category does it fall under? All right, you ready? Here's your first one. Is this legit? This one actually showed up in my timeline. Is this legit? This is on Facebook. It is a reel shared by someone named Barry Spring. And it shows, it's a video of Donald Trump walking out of a building and waving. And it says, speaking of crowd size, here's Donald waving at no one. And then the caption is, the emperor has no clothes. Is this legit? Is this true? So is this legit? Let us know in chat. Is this legit?
We're getting a lot of comments that folks think this is not legit, or they're not sure. They're not sure.
Good.
Oh, and then we have a couple legits coming on here.
All right. All
No?
right.
Yes, no?
Oh, I like it.
And then, yeah, so, yeah. Oh my gosh.
I like it. Let's go through a little bit slower. Let's do, so to determine if something is true or not, we got over here on the side your three simple steps. First of all, check the source. What is the source of this information? One, it is it's a video, not taken by this guy, some video. So we actually don't know the source of this. Where is it posted? It's posted on Facebook. Little hint, anything that is online, immediately take with a huge grain of salt and go fact check that. And then there's something called the smell test. So this is, really decide for yourself if this looks and feels like a legitimate piece of news. So first of all, a legitimate news source, look for things like, a legitimate news source is not going to call him Donald. It's going to have, there's no punctuation here. If there's like spelling errors, stuff like that are things that could hint that this might not be from a legitimate news source. Other things might just be the tone, right? It's kind of jokey. It's kind of funny. So these are all things that make you think that, maybe this didn't actually happen. And then another thing that you can do is you can go to fact-checking websites to see if it is true or not. And in this case, if you went to one of those websites, it would say, nope, this is not true. Well, it is the type that it is, though, is this is a genuine clip, but it was manipulated. They edited it to make it seem like he was waving to nobody, right? So it's an edited clip. It's not, so yes, while the video is true, it was edited to take it out of context. So this is rated as false. So again, those things are to check that original source, see where it's posted, give it that smell test, and then if you need to look it up on fact checkers. We got another one coming. How about this one? Posted on X by Rachel Bidikofer. She says Trump's Project 2025 plan includes ending the Department of Education. Yes, ending it. There have been 0 front page stories about it. My son, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to read the whole thing, but is this true? Is this true? Does Project 2025 want to end, and Trump want to end the Department of Education? So let's give it, is it legit? Yes or no? Give me the yes or no. True, true, true. I see a whole bunch of trues. Yeah, legit. I think some people have done their homework. So let's walk through that. Let's go through. First, check that original source. Now, I'll be honest, in some ways, this starts throwing up some flags. One, it's posted on X. It's posted on Twitter. Anything you see on Twitter, immediately take that in with a grain of salt. Next, it's written. It's posted by someone from the Democratic side of the aisle. So yeah, you can kind of smell test wise might want to put up a caution flag. And then there's the framing of it, or the tone of it, saying yes, ending it. That's very strong. It's really trying to engage your emotions. Anytime anything's trying to gauge your emotions, little flag should go up that, I should check this. Well, let's check it. If we did check it, sure enough, it is true. Not only does Project 2025 say that it plans to end the Department of Education, Trump has repeated that just the other day when he was doing that thing with Elon Musk. He said it again, that he intends to end the Department of Education. So this is true. So even though has some of the red flags, you do want to check that information, check it against credible news sources, check it against fact-checked websites, and yep, it turns out to be true. So we're going to quickly go through those steps again of how you can spot fake news. This comes from the Federation of Library Associations, so from librarians. Always the best resource is your librarians. So first, to review, you consider that source. What is the source of this information? Do they have links if they're talking about news? Like if Rachel wanted to make that a better post, she would have linked it to a news source, a credible news source. That would have made that post even better. Read beyond those headlines. Remember, there's stuff out there like clickbait. Again, supporting sources is always helpful. Check the date. A lot of times disinformation, if it landed at some point in the past, they are going to bring it back again. I call it swing into the oldies. They bring the old stuff back because it worked before, it'll work again. So check the date. A lot of times disinformation is old posts. Is it a joke? Just like, is this like, it could be satire. So make sure you're not missing the joke. Understand what your biases are. Like for that first post, I sure wanted that to be true. I sure wanted it to be true. So I take that into account. I might have wanted it to be true, but I'm going to check my own bias and double check that even, and make sure that it is factually true. And I want to give you a couple more sources. So again, the AdFunts Media, I recommend just having that as a source. The static version that I had, the little screenshot, is just a smattering of what they have out there. They have this that you could search any media thing and it'll show you where it falls on there. So it really helps you to be able to curate really good sources. And then there's a whole list of fact-checking links. I got my new favorite list is from the University of Maine's library. They have a really good collection of fact-checking links that you can use to find things like Snopes. I found the 2 examples today on the Snopes website, but there's other ones. There's a cool one I didn't know about, Google's Fact Checker Explorer. It's a search just like you would search in Google, and instead it brings you any fact checking that has been done out there. If there's articles already fact checking a story, it will show you just those. So there's some really good resources out there. Again, our librarians are our best friends in combating disinformation. So going to their sources like the University of Maine here is always highly recommended. All right, so that's what disinformation, put some tools in your toolbox for how to counter disinformation. Next, I want to talk about kind of framing when you are in social media, when you are online in social media. I want you to know that, it's not the real world. It doesn't act in an organic way at all. Instead, when you are online, you're in an algorithm. You're in a man-made algorithm. And those algorithms were built to amplify negative emotions or amplify very strong emotions, particularly negative emotions. We know that's true, at least for sure for Facebook, because a whistleblower from somebody who helped build that algorithm to show that they artificially weighted the negative stuff more than the positive. So when you are on a social media platform, just remember, you're not in the real world. It's not organic. This is you're in an algorithm, and it's an algorithm that, like I said, favors that negative stuff. Also, when you are on social media, another way that it's not organic is if you're seeing something a lot, and if something shows up a lot, it doesn't mean that it's popular, doesn't mean that, again, that it's organically being elevated. There's something out there called super spreaders. Super spreaders. These are and bad actors know all about super spreaders and how they work. They know how then to manipulate that algorithm. So to give you an example, back in the last presidential campaign, when there was super spreaders that were spreading misleading information about voting. And just 20 people, think of, and this is on Twitter, think of at the time in 2020, how many people are on Twitter? Well, just 20 accounts were spreading 20% of all the misleading content. And it's not like, oh my gosh, if we could only identify these people, then we could do something about it. Well, we did, we could. It's right here. There's a list on the screen of who these super spreaders were, who these bad accounts were. This is all happening out in the open. So it's helpful to know that there are super spreaders, just so you don't feel as if this information is being elevated organically. No, this is just part of that manipulation. We also saw it during COVID times when the vaccines were being rolled out. The anti-vax stuff was being artificially boosted in our timelines as well. And again, we know exactly who they are. We know who those people are. I don't think it's any coincidence that two of the three people that are running for president right now are super spreaders. Right? This is like that is not a coincidence. So, but again, just know that that the amplification of this negative stuff, the amplification of these lies, it's not organic. This is stuff that is being perpetuated by bad actors. So what can we do about that? So if you're on social media and you encounter a piece of disinformation, what can we do about that? Well, kind of the best thing that you can do when you encounter a piece of disinformation is to do nothing, to ignore it. Because again, you're not in the real world. Anytime that you click on a piece of disinformation, the algorithm, it thinks that you're saying, I love this, I want more people to see it. Even if you're clicking on it to say, oh my gosh, this is absolute trash, doesn't matter. The algorithm just hears, I want more people to see this, and it's going to amplify it. So remember, anytime that you click on a piece of disinformation, you are telling the algorithm, I want more people to see this. So instead, what do? Because it's so hard just to ignore that stuff and walk away. Instead, what you do is that you put out the good stuff. And because we know that those algorithms favor that negative information, you got to put out that good stuff 5 times. So if you see a bad piece of misinformation, counter that by doing 5 good things to help spread the good news and get the good stuff out there. So a good action to take when you are on social media is to like something, love something, share something, like or retweet or share. Anytime you click any of those buttons, that's going to be a good thing. If you want to do something even better, what you want to do is you want to add an original comment or share something and add some text with it. Anytime you're adding content, good content, that's just going to amplify that good stuff even more. And then the actual best thing that you can do is you can go find a great news story, a positive news story. Man, there's a lot of good news stories out there right now about Kamala and Tim Walz, really good stuff out there. Go find the stuff and share it, put it out there, add that out in as content out there. So post those legit news stories, get that good stuff out there. All right, we're going to turn now to empathy. So now understanding how the heck can people believe this stuff. So first we're going to talk about our brains, not Democratic brains, not Republican brains, everybody's brains. So we're going to talk just about the way that brains work. Human brains, when we encounter a piece of information, so that information, we're scrolling through our phones, we see a piece of information, it hits our eyeballs, hits us on the head. And in a split second, your brain asks itself 5 questions. Split second, as soon as it encounters a new piece of information, it asks itself 5 questions. The first question you can actually feel yourself asking: do others people believe this? Do others believe it? This is true whether you're walking down the street and you hear a noise and you look around. What's the first thing? Did other people hear that? Same thing as when you're online, you encounter a new piece of information. First thing you do others believe it? You might be looking at how many times has this video been viewed? How many likes has this post gotten, right? That might be the first thing you're doing. The reason why you're doing that, you're wondering, do other people believe this? Because that's going to help you decide if it is true or not. If you decide that other people believe it, you're going to keep asking yourself further questions to determine if it's true. If you don't think other people believe it, it's going to bounce right off your head. You might not even see that piece of information. You might not even see it. The next question you're going to ask yourself: can I easily find evidence that it's true? Not can I spend 10 minutes fact checking and find it as true? Can I hear in this split second of time, can I find evidence that it's true? Next question is it compatible with something that I already believe? Have I already kind of thought about this before? The next question after that, does it tell a good story? The basis of human communication is storytelling. So if something tells a good story, it's going to make us believe it more. And then finally, is it coming from a familiar source? Is a person saying it to me, someone that I know, someone that I've heard from before? Again, if any time that you encounter, you ask yourself one of those questions, it says no, that information, not even going to see it, going to scroll right on by, just going to keep going. Whereas if you have seen, if you say yes, then you're going to continue on, and then you're eventually going to evaluate that that information is true. So what's that mean? That means that if we've seen the information before, we are likely to then say that it is true. If we haven't seen the information before, we might not even see the information, or we might then think that the information is false. So this comes from a study. This study shows that people who are told 3 times that a statement was false were more likely to believe that it was true than the people that were only told it once. So even though they were told 3 times, this statement is false, just because they heard it multiple times, because of that repetition, they started to believe that it was true. It's just the way our brains work, just the way that our brains work. So again, our brains will process familiar information as true. And guess who knows this information? Oops, I see stuff on the screen, so I'm going to stop share and reshare so that goes away. Hold on 1 second. All right, we back? All right. So again, our brains will process familiar information as true. An example of this, how we know that bad actors know how our brain works, is the beginning of the big lie back in 2020, as people were voting back in 2020. They started, the conservatives, Republicans, MAGA started posted a story showing it's just an old photo of a trailer, old photo, but they took it and they posted it as if it was new, and they put this caption on it, an out of context caption, which you now know is a form of disinformation, saying that this was evidence that ballots were destroyed. So maybe a loved one encountered this information back in October of 2020 and like, oh, that's silly, and they didn't believe it. But then right after that, they came again, another post, another time saying, look, they're shredding ballots. Maybe that second time your loved one saw that, they also said, nah, this can't be true. But then the third time they saw it again, they just kept repeating that lie over and over and over again until people started to believe it. So again, bad actors, they know that repeated lies, our brains will start to process them as true. So what can you do about that? Well, first, knowing about it, right? Knowing about it is always helpful. But another thing that you can do about it is, then that repeated words then start to stick. The first time, they're not even going to hear you, right? If it's new information, if it's challenging something that they already believe, the first time they're not even going to hear you. So you've got to put it on repeat. We call this course Pop the Disinformation Bubble. So take the metaphor of popping a bubble. If you wanted to pop a bubble, you don't press on it from all sides, right? That's not going to pop the bubble. If you want to pop the bubble, you take a little pinprick and 1 point, and that's how you pop the bubble. So the same thing goes when you want to when you want to get somebody to listen to the truth. You don't want to give them 100 different truths. You want to put one truth on repeat. And the first time you say it, they're not going to hear you. The second time you say it, they're not going to hear you. The third time, fourth time, they're probably not going to hear you. But eventually, that truth will sink in. Will eventually hear it. Other things that can help supercharge the people to hearing that truth is if you tell it as a story. Again, one of the things that will help people process something as true is if it's told in the context of a story. And another thing is if you're talking to people that you know, you are a familiar voice. So that is going to give you that superpower to be able to get people to hear you even faster. So again, talk to people that you know. All right, next piece. Also then another thing that you can do and that you can help others do with this information is that then you can help others and yourself to build that self-trust that you can do what's called critical thinking. So critical thinking is when you stop that just automatic process of your brain processing familiar information as true, and you stop that information, that you stop that process, and you actually think critically down all those steps. So that first one, do other people believe it? Say to yourself, you know, I'm going to be the judge. I don't need other people to validate. I'm going to be the judge. Next thing, can I easily find evidence that is true? You know what? Again, stop, give yourself a few minutes to do some fact checking, to actually take the time to determine if something is true. Next, is this compatible with what I already believe? If you feel yourself, you know, being drugged in hearing, you know, finding comfort in something being something that you've heard before, again, maybe you want to be open to new ideas. Be open to some new ideas. That's all part of critical thinking. Does it tell a good story? Well, sometimes we don't want a story. Sometimes we just want the facts, and just leave it to the facts. And finally, does it come from a familiar source? Well, maybe it's time to listen to some new voices out there as well. So be open to hearing from fresh voices. So again, that's thinking critically. So both challenge yourself to do that and also others. So help others be able to see when they might just be stuck in a loop and it's time for them to think critically. Also, what happens when you encounter a piece of information is maybe you go right past that whole brain and you go right to the heart. And maybe you just want something to be true, right? So that first example we had where we showed Donald Trump walking out of that building and waving, you know, that the caption was that he was waving to no one. I hate Donald Trump. I want him to be miserable. When I saw that video, I wanted it to be true, right? So maybe I forego all that I know about how to critically think and how to look up information and all that. Maybe I forego all of that and I just really wanted it to be true, right? So again, that is another way that we interpret information. Is we just interpret, we could want things to be true. So maybe we're okay kind of bending the facts. Maybe we're okay. We can morally justify some lies if they support our political beliefs. You know, it's sometimes you can say the message is more important than accuracy. All this stuff is really dangerous. All that stuff is dangerous to be walking away from an objective truth, walking away from objective facts, but it is something that our heart does. And bad actors know it. Bad actors know how our heart works as well. So they will they are very comfortable then in spouting lies. We had Donald Trump gave a press conference a matter of days ago where he said a whopping 162 lies in an hour. That's over 2 lies a minute. Pete Buttigieg was on a news show and he was remarking that's like an Olympian feat to be able to get that many lies in that short amount of time. But he's emboldened to do that because he knows that his audience, that they don't care that what he's saying is false. They want to hear that because he's affirming their grievances. He's making them signify their loyalty by saying that, hey, I'll even believe the most preposterous stuff that this guy says. That's how much I'm loyal to him. It also suggests that there is no objective truth. Of course, there is an objective truth, but he's saying that there isn't an objective truth. Instead, there's this deep conspiracy theory truth out there, right? So he can say all of those lies because to his people, he's actually speaking not to their brains, but to their hearts. So what do we do? What do we do to counter that information? One, there's a new study out that if anybody's a real nerd, hi, like me, there's a new study out called When Truth Trumps Facts, Studies on Partisan Moral Flexibility in American Politics. So again, you're a big nerd and that really excites you. That was just published last month, and it goes into depth about people believing lies, even though they know that those are lies, even though they know they're not true, believing those lies because again, they align with their political beliefs. And it is overwhelmingly a case of people believing lies, even if they know that they are lies, on the Republican side. And that's because facts are actually on the Democratic side. So we like to use facts on the Democratic side because, yeah, the facts are in our favor. So the Republicans have to run away from facts because they overwhelming are not in their favor. But facts are on our side. So what can we do about it if we see people that are believing lies just because they really politically want them to be true? Just stick to the facts. There is a such thing as objective facts, right? Republicans are trying to say there isn't a such thing as objective facts. Stick to it that there is a such thing as objective facts, and hold yourself accountable to that, because I mean, it is political season. We're going to go to a rally. I went to Kamala's rally in Detroit. It was amazing. Forget all that AI stuff. I was there. I saw it with my eyeballs. It was huge. It was amazing. And I mean, yeah, you're sitting there in a political rally, and sometimes, they're going to say things that really appeal to your heart that might not be 100% true. They might be 95% true, but they might not be 100% true, right? And I'm going to sit there and hold myself accountable to that. Yes, I was very swayed in the moment, but I also know the things that they were saying might not be 100% true, and I'm going to hold them to it. I'm going to make sure that because I believe that people should be more truthful. I understand there's spin, but yeah, check yourself, hold yourself accountable, and then also hold others accountable to that beautiful thing of objective truth. A couple more things to go over about how people can believe these lies. Another one is called political gaslighting. So gaslighting is when a person is trying to make you distrust your own eyes and ears. We saw some political gaslighting. I just mentioned I went to that rally in Detroit. Little piece of political gaslighting, very obvious, is when Donald Trump was saying that those photos were fake. He's like, nope, I saw it with my own eyeballs. These eyeballs, I saw it myself, but he's turning there trying to tell me that it's fake, right? That's all gaslighting. They're trying to make me distrust my own senses, my own ability to be able to navigate my own eyes and ears. So, so political gaslighting, some symptoms of that, some ways that you can identify is when they give outlandish counter narratives. So again, an outlandish counter narrative is that it wasn't fake, right? Here's this beautiful photo of all these 15,000 of my closest friends that are excited for Kamala Harris, and then they counter that with completely fake. Outlandish counter narratives. Another outlandish counter narrative. We all watched in absolute dismay on January 6th as MAGA was attacking the Capitol, and they come back and they say, that was Democrats, right? Outlandish counter narratives. Why do they do that? Well, they do that because one, they want to distract people with being so outlandish. And two, it makes people kind of feel disoriented and unsure, right? Did I really see that? Did that really happen? Maybe I can't really, maybe I'm not really good at gauging, what really happened there. Another one, denial of plain fact. You see this all the time, denying plain fact. Donald Trump does this constantly, where he's denying that he said something when we all saw him say it. So again, what that does, again, it makes you just trust your ears. Maybe I didn't hear it. The most common thing that you hear Trumpies say is that he was just joking. He was just kidding, right? Oh no, he was just kidding. Well, that is also a form of gaslighting, because it's making you question your ability to be able to recognize humor, be able to recognize, oh, this is so complicated, this is so nuanced, I can't pick up the nuance of what's going on. So, it's making, again, distrust yourself. And the first thing that that Donald Trump did when, after he came down that golden escalator, right after, well, the first thing he did was give a green light to hate speech. But the second thing he did is he made everyone turn around, point to the press, and said they're the real enemy. Why did he do that? That makes it so he was discrediting authorities. He was making it so people could no longer get the facts, right? So if anybody's been in an abusive relationship, some of these things might sound familiar, of cutting you off from any ability to be able to get help for yourself. So political gaslighting. What happens if you know somebody, you have someone in your life, you feel like they have been gaslit? First of all, when someone is gaslit, somewhere deep down in their gut, they know something's off. They know something's wrong. So maybe engage them and just say, hey, what's your gut say? Also, just introducing this idea of what political gaslighting is, because when you're in it, you don't really, it's so nebulous, you can't really put your finger on it. But when someone introduces it to you, then you can start to see the symptoms. And the best, most helpful thing that you can do to somebody who's being politically gaslit is to physically just remove them from the source. So literally say, hey, let's take a break from social media for a little while. Hey, let's go camping and put our phones away for a little while. Really, literally remove them from the source. And then that's going to make it easier for them to see that they have been gaslit. All right, the last thing that we are going to cover here tonight is to talk about the lies that are shouted the loudest are actually coming from people who know the least. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So when you don't have that confidence to be able to really trust your eyes and ears, you don't have that confidence to go out and critically think, then you can't actually grow wisdom. You can't actually get any smarter. And what that does is the less wisdom you have, the more confidence you actually have in that knowledge that you have. Because what it means is you don't have enough knowledge to know what you don't know. So it actually makes you louder. So why are those people on the internet, why are they so loud? It's because they don't know what they're talking about. They have the least amount of wisdom, therefore they are the loudest. They have the most confidence. So what can you do? I love that there's a scientific term called the peak of Mount Stupid. So if you know somebody who is at that peak, they have very little information, so they're so confident in it. What can you do to help them see and start humble themselves and start learning, getting new information? There's something called the illusion of explanatory depth. You've probably felt this at some point in your life where you might have thought you knew something about a subject and then you had to turn around and teach it to others. And suddenly you're very humbled. You realize you don't know as much as you thought you did. So we can use that illusion of explanatory depth to be asking somebody who sounds so confident that they know everything. Ask them, tell me more about that. Explain that to me. It might feel as if you're getting people to dig in and further entrench themselves in their beliefs, but you know that person is so confident because they don't know what they're talking about. So when you get them to explain that to them, what they're going to do is they're going to realize they don't know what they're talking about. So it's actually going to make them humble. It's going to make them curious. Actually, the most common thing that happens is when you start pushing people to tell you more, to explain it more, they actually get angry because they've never, they're starting to realize what they don't know. But that's okay, because that is our way of being able to help people to start to learn more, start to think critically, start to think for themselves. So last line here is to rebuild that trust with others. So again, we started off by saying that we got to this point because we have had bad actors sow distrust, continually to sow distrust. So we need to build that back. So the foundation of trust is vulnerability. So if you're able to be vulnerable out there with people that you know, that is how we are going to be able to build trust. So share, it's like, hey, I was fooled by disinformation before, but knowing the truth is such a relief. So being vulnerable, letting people know. Another big one is you don't know all the information, right? You're not on the peak of Mount Stupid. You know what you don't know. So also letting people know that you don't know all of the answers, but let's figure that out together. Let's find that information together. So helping others be able to find those good resources, curate those good materials.